Hi, my name's Caroline Rickard and I'm the School Services Officer here at the Wealdon Down and Living Museum. Welcome. Let's go and visit the mill where we're going to find out all about how it works. Our watermill comes originally from Lurgashall, not far from here. Evidence suggests that there was a watermill on that site from about the 17th century, but it underwent various changes over the years, for example modernisation and repairs. It fell into disuse in about the 1930s and gradually fell into disrepair. It was then removed piece by piece and reconstructed here at the museum in the 1970s. Watermills were once commonplace in the landscape. This is an excerpt from a Robert Louis Stevenson poem called Where Go the Boats, and in A Child's Garden of Verses, several of Stevenson's poems mention mills, both water and wind powered. In that respect, the energy used wasn't considered alternative at the time. There are different designs of water wheel, and here we see one where the water comes in at the bottom and the force of the water pushes against the paddles to turn the wheel. Look at the diagram to see the direction in which the water is flowing and the direction the wheel moves as a result. Here the water comes in partway up the water wheel, and as it pours into the buckets, the force of the water plus gravity causes the wheel to start turning. Our own mill employs what's called an overshot water wheel. In this picture, the water's travelling at some speed and hitting the water wheel with some force. The water enters our wheel more slowly, and as the water cascades over the top, the weight of the water filling each bucket causes the wheel to turn on account of gravity. Of course, whatever style of water wheel you use, your mill needs a reliable source of water and wouldn't be able to run if there was a drought. We're now going to meet Pat Naismith, one of our millers here at the museum. Come with me to the upper mill pond and she'll start to tell us all about how the mill works.
Thank you, Caroline. Let's have a look round and see how everything works. Water is held in the mill pond by the raised banks. We control the flow by raising the sluice gate. The top of the water wheel is immediately below the end of the channel, so the water drops into the top bucket and then overflows into the next one. The more water we allow to flow down the channel, the faster the wheel will turn. This pair of millstones are similar to the pair which we are currently using. The bedstone is set into the floor. It does not move, and the runner stone is placed on top of it and is turned by a shaft coming up from the machinery on the ground floor. The faces of the millstones have a pattern cut into them by the millwright, which cuts the wheat and grinds it into flour as it moves from the centre to the edge of the stones. Here we have the machinery that is currently used to produce flour. The hopper is filled by grain which is poured down the chute by the miller. The movement of the machinery shakes the grain gently into the centre of the millstones, which are in the barrel, and the stones start to grind it. When the flour reaches the outer edge of the stones, it is pushed around the inside face of the barrel until it reaches a hole in the floor. It then drops down a chute to the ground floor. The flour is coming down from the millstones on the floor above. It is checked for quality and then bagged up for sale. If we want to stop the mill, we need to stop the water reaching the water wheel. We could go and close the sluice gate. However, a quicker way is to pull on this rope. This raises a flap in the water channel, which allows the water to drop down and bypass the wheel, which slowly stops.
Thanks, Pat. This cutaway image reminds us of everything we've seen inside the watermill, all the moving parts that allow us to transfer the kinetic energy, initially from the force of the water and from gravity, to eventually turn the millstones and grind the grain into flour. Some of the energy is dissipated during the process, lost through heat produced because of friction between the moving parts. Of course, if you don't have a water supply to power a watermill, you can still make flour. Here we see a Quernstone, a basic tool powered by a person. And here, a slightly more advanced rotary quern. Some of you might have had a toy like this as a child, and you might want to have a go at designing your own version of a water wheel, maybe even thinking about what it could power. Each of the buckets on our water wheel can hold 8 to 10 gallons, and a gallon is roughly 4.5 litres. But we can also run it more gently, and that might mean only 3 gallons per bucket. As there are 40 buckets and we tend to run the mill at about 5 revolutions per minute, that's quite a lot of water in just 1 minute. I'll leave you to do some maths as to how much water it might therefore need in a day, say 8 hours. It's quite a lot, and that's just to run gently, whereas in reality the miller would have run the mill at optimum capacity to get the job done. Sometimes the water's used directly from streams and rivers, but these can also be diverted and might feed into a mill pond where some mills stored much of the water they needed. Here we see a model of a series of 2nd century Roman watermills based on archaeological remains discovered in France. Experts believe that the water used by one pair of mills was then passed on to the next pair, and that there were 8 pairs, so 16 mills in total. To power these mills, there was a 9-kilometre aqueduct carrying water from springs to the site. There are various websites, such as this one, where you can research further information. We hope you've enjoyed your virtual visit to the Weald Downland Living Museum. Maybe you'll be able to visit for real one day and see the mill in action for yourself. In the meantime, we'll leave you with some questions that you might want to have a go at answering. And if you find out anything interesting, Pat and I would love to hear from you.
Set in over 40 acres in the heart of the South Downs National Park, the Weald Downland Living Museum is a unique and vibrant open-air museum created to preserve and celebrate the history of rural England and the ordinary people who lived it, a story which might otherwise be lost. At our heart is a large collection of historic buildings and artefacts spanning over 1,000 years, originating from the counties of Sussex, Surrey, Hampshire and Kent, the Weald and Downland region. This has been a spiritual home to many since it opened to the public 50 years ago. It is only through the inspirational effort and dedication of our founder, Roy Armstrong, and the many passionate visionaries and volunteers that the museum exists. Our core purpose is to rescue and conserve historic buildings, to teach traditional trades and crafts to ensure their preservation, and to share the untold stories of rural life in South East England. We have working exhibits that, through demonstrations, crafts and hands-on activities, show how they would have operated hundreds of years ago. Our collection stands proudly within the site, reminding and educating us not only of the past, but also the present, and will stand the test of time in an ever-changing future. The Weald and Downland Living Museum gives a sense of place and wonder, and continues to give so many a chance to witness a past that is truly alive.